All right, so last week I made my students help me decide which painting to do, and they decided that they wanted the foggy one. I think they did it just to see if I could actually pull this off. It is going to be a little bit complex. There's some things that we need to think about on how we're going to put it together. First, though, let me just do a little tiny bit about how I did the drawing. So I've put the photo into a clear sleeve that I had marked boxes on. Here, I'll turn it up that way so you can see I had marked boxes on. So then I was able to take those same spaces and mark them onto my drawing paper and then place the objects so that they would fit within the correct area of the painting. It's an easy way to make sure that you've got your proportions right, your places right, if you liked what was on the photograph. So now, let's see, I need to keep this photograph a little closer so I can see it while I'm working, and let's get rid of the drawing. You may not be able to see that really clearly on my piece, but I do have it on there. Now, what I need to decide is, so now I have to decide what I'm actually going, how I'm going to approach this. And I'm feeling that to make this foggy feel, I'm going to need to do this in 2 or 3 layers, actually 3 layers for sure. My first layer is going to include the sky and the clouds, and I think I can grade this down into here and then grade up with some of these colors in that first wet and wet wash. And then my next layer, I will define these mountains and I'm going to do more than 3 layers because I'm going to define these mountains into a grade that's going to come down in through here with a wash, let that dry, and then come back and do another wash in this area to bring in those trees. And so then I'm probably going to have to paint it from this direction. That way I might have to turn it over because it's a little bit darker here on the bottom than it is on the top. But it's going to go in on top of that lovely little soft piece. And then we've got our beautiful colors down in here. We'll see how well we're able to get them in that first wash. The hammock, I can pick that out with my rag when I do that first wash. And then, of course, the dark trees are going to be a silhouette on the top at the end. So we're looking 3, 4, maybe 5. We'll see as we go how much we're able to get at any one point. It's a little bit dangerous for me to do this in the same wash that I do that, because this might bleed further than I want it to. We'll have to see. Maybe this can dry enough that I can then bring that in there without a problem. Live dangerously, right? Live dangerously. So I have mixed, and I'm going to just move this over a little bit so you can see my entire pan. I've mixed cobalt blue. I've mixed a red and green together to make a grayish, purpley red. I've mixed a quinacridone rose with vermilion to make a red. I have sap green with just a little bit of ultramarine blue in it, sap green with more ultramarine blue, sap green with even more ultramarine blue. So those are going to be my basic colors that I'm going to work with for right now. Move that over a little bit. Hopefully I'm getting this in the right place. I'm going to start with this flat and then put my lift on it so that I can tell which way things are going to be flowing. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and use this my old Daler Rowney wash brush. It's a nice wash brush. What I want to do is get a nice even layer of water on here, and to start with I want this pretty soaked. I don't know if I'm going to want it just absolutely running off, but I want it enough that when I do that blue sky it's going to be nice and smooth. And then we're going to pick those. I have a combination of not getting everything wet with the blue and picking some off with my dry rag, and which you can do a tissue as well. Looking in from the side on this to see if I have any dry spots. And of course, almost always it seems like we have a dry spot or two. And just going back and forth, making sure it's totally evenly covered. I want that water pretty even so that when I go to put the paint on it, it's going to do it fairly smoothly. So it's this, this is a mixture of cobalt blue with just a little bit of phthalo blue into it. And there are some beautiful, so I'm just painting the blue sky part and leaving the white behind. Let's see, my mountains are right there. So we're going to have blue sky, and then it's going to come down and be a little thinner. And I can just bring this in right over where those mountains are going to be. Put a little more blue up in there for that blue area. And then I'm seeing in these clouds, and let me just use my other brush, there is a little pinkness to it. So I can just take a little of my pink that I had. There's a little pinkness in here. Careful how much water I introduce. And these clouds they're a little grayer. So let's just, on the bottom side of this, if I add just a little pink to it, and then work it up into here, we'll get some of that gray cloud happening in there and still be able to leave that blue behind. And then the sun is over on this side over here, so let's just add a little bit of yellow. Got to be careful how much. And just work it just a little bit, add a little bit of that red to it so it gets a little more orange. And there's a big light spot over there that I don't want to lose. But I do like this little feeling that maybe there's some, and then a little, this darker cloud up at the top up here. Yeah, just a touch more. Just want to work that just a little bit so that it feels more like it's a gray cloud. Be careful about overdoing it. I think we're pretty close here. And then maybe this is a little too orange, or too red. I'll just take that up into there just a little more and up into that lighter cloud. And maybe we want some more feeling of this coming up into here. So I'm just almost dry brush, and then just a little touch of pink. Be careful. Boy, it gets too much pretty fast. Just light. I'm taking a little bit of that off, adding it back in. Now we're getting sort of a pretty cloud there. Now let's take and turn this over and see how dangerously I can live with this grass stuff that's in the bottom. And so let me start with some red. There's a beautiful pattern of red that runs through this picture in sort of a undulating pattern, and then it works in with green. So we're going to try painting those both simultaneously. So I'm going to put some of this red in. I'm going to leave some white spaces between it. It comes right up to those trees, works its way all the way across through there, and it's sort of undulating. So we need to come run through there. Okay, a little edge on it. This is already drying some. I guess it's a little warmer here than I thought it was. And oh, it's red, beautiful red end back behind these guys here. And now let's see what happens when and then this is the other thing. As it gets back into this part of it, it turns more of this purpley color. And that was where my hammock was. I've got to get that hammock picked back off of there pretty quickly. And into those reds. And where was that hammock? It was right in. The hammock is right in that area there. And let's get that uneven in there. Okay, now we're going to get some greens added into this. And if I win, and who knows, I might lose here. Nothing like doing things in front of you guys and then seeing what's going to happen. But as I add these bits of green in here, I want to be careful not to add them everywhere, but enough that the reds and the greens are going to mix together and become a little bit grayer. Let's see, that's the bottom of my tree there. And then I can, if I leave some spaces, I can come in and I can do some more red in on top of there. Of course, I didn't mix nearly enough of that red. So I need to mix a bit more. And let's just get a little more intense with it here. And then when I put the green in with it, it's going to dull it down some. So it didn't feel like it was intense enough. So it really needed a little thicker mixture in there. You know, wet and wet is such a fun thing to do and scary thing to do. And so then we want a little thin green up here. And it's going to come up, those trees come up to, boy, it's hard to see my lines. Okay. The trees are going to come up into there. And I want this soft when it comes up into here. I don't want it hard. And I need to get a little more of that red out of my brush because I don't really want this red up in here. I want that to lean a little toward blue. And let's just mix that in. My mountains are way up there. Okay, we're in good shape. This is where the trees are. We're all right. All right, Margaret. I might have bitten off a little more than I could chew here. I've got to work really fast because this is now starting to dry. And when it does, then my little wets are not going to work the way I want them to. And let's go with darker green in here. A little more red. Bring that down just a hair. Okay, that's better. I like this better than another painting that I tried to do without mixing these colors wet and wet. Bottom of my that hammock is just sort of there, and let's see, let that run across there. There's some green that runs off through here, and let's get this softening up into a little bit of slightly bluish. Just sort of where those are going to be, and I'll be able to rescue this later. But I just have to sort of bring this up to where things are going to be. This really is supposed to be grading off to 0 again, so that in the middle of this we have, and oh yeah, that's right, we did that lovely thing on one of the other ones where I just took and, yes, that's going to help that. Just soften that out. And then over in here also, a little bit more of that cobalt blue in where those trees are going to be. They come up to, that's mountains, trees are going to come up sort of up into here. Okay. And soften that top edge with my rag since this is dried. And we have dampness that's coming in here, so I can come in with a little thicker paint in on top of what I just did. And oh, by the time it gets out here, it needed to be that purpley tone. Okay. And now we need to get more green over in here. So let some of that be a little bit darker. I can break it into this red. And underneath of there, yeah, okay, so it's not going to be exactly the same as that picture, but I want to get the feeling of that. You know, this sort of undulating thing of the red moving through the greens there, and what happens as the two of them find each other. And then let's just cut through this just a little bit more. And There's a bunch of little white spots, which that picture there is no white spots except for that hammock. And the hammock itself, you know, the bottom part of that hammock, I can do that right now, is a paler color. Hopefully that doesn't run into there too much. Maybe I should have, no, it's okay. It's okay if it is soft on the bottom edge of that. But we can just take the brush and do that. Get rid of those little spots. Get rid of those little spots. Get rid of those little spots. I just try to do sort of grassy movements with my brush when I do that. We're going to get to a point where it's going to cause problems if I'm not careful. And does this need to be a little darker green down in here? It feels like it, doesn't it? So we can keep adding thicker and darker paint to this, but I can't put thinner paint on or it's going to start pushing the paint away. But I can build this up, so you know, if this is feeling like as it's drying that it's not quite dark enough, I can come in here and let's see, that's going to undulate, so it goes up and down. You know, when I put that red on, it felt like it was way too intense, and now that it's drying, it almost feels like it's too light. So it's interesting to see what happens as you build this across. And there's a beautiful light area in there that I don't want to lose. My tree is going to come in on top of that. I think we are at the point where I really should just let this be. And that's got to be careful there, because I think, Margaret, you need to stop. This is one of those things where it's really easy to just totally overfuss it. I think when I came in there, I actually picked a little paint off. And so let's just try adding a little paint back in, a little thicker paint. And oh, I like how in the photograph this comes down into there. Okay. And if I'm not careful, then now I'm going to have to come back in with a little thicker, darker green in there. Let's see here. We did the tile in the yard, in the bathroom, so now we have to do the tile in the kitchen. You've got to be careful about overbalancing. And let me add just a little lighter green to that. You know, I'm notorious about not stopping when I say I should. The intensity of what's happening here, and it's like, ooh, but I've got to be careful here. It's sort of pretty right now. Let's see, this has to get down all the way down to that edge. I can't have any little light spots there. Bring that up. If I keep going at this is just going to turn muddy, and I love the freshness that's here. So I think I best stop. Although once again, I'm seeing something where I have a wetter space against a dry space, which is then causing some problems. And now this is going to be softened out into here, so let's just soften that edge with the rag. And then I think we best stop on this, because I like that lightness that's happening in there. I like that this is a little bit darker up in here, and that our intensity of that green is happening here next to these reds. two opposite colors, you can paint them side by side. You just don't want it too wet when you do, because otherwise they're just going to turn into gray. But they can become a pretty intensely beautiful space. Yeah, that looks lovely. Maybe a little more grassy feel here. I do a lot of my painting sort of by the seat of my pants, and you do it by feeling, and so, you know, as you slow down and look at this, you can sort of see some things that maybe have to happen, and that's one reason why I'm sort of fussing here a little more when maybe I should be walking away from this. I just want this feeling of that grass. The fireweed is sort of a tall, grassy plant, and then the flowers are at the top of it. So it has this very grassy feel when it's in a meadow. And that's a little darker there. And the edge of that. Okay. Soften this edge. Don't want that too harsh. Okay, better stop.